All right, so today we're working from 19 through 33. So on our notes, we're going over the rules that we saw yesterday. So first thing we got to do, let me take a look at number 19. First of all, let me get rid of parentheses if there's any. And then let me get rid of, and then the way I get rid of parentheses, I multiply the exponent on the outside to the exponents on the inside. Then the next thing I'm going to do, let me get rid of negative exponents. Negative exponents, when it's a negative on one side, it becomes positive on the other side. And when I mean sides, I'm talking about like the top side or the bottom side. So let me just rewrite everything in terms of positive exponents. Looking on the top, I'm just looking on the top. I have a -4. It's a negative number, but it has a positive exponent. And then I'm going to have the m to the third. I'm going to bring it to the bottom. And then on the top, I still have an n to the fourth and p to the fourth. Matter of fact, let me put this a little closer. That's just from what I had originally on the top, right? The negative exponents come as positives at the bottom. Now, I'm just going to look at what I have at the bottom. From the bottom, like I said, my focus right now is just the bottom. I see a -4. Then I see an n. And then I see m to the -2. So that m is going to come to the top. And then I see a p to the -1. So that p to the 1 comes on the top. My exponent of 1, I can choose to write or not. So all I did was everything that had a negative exponent, I moved it to the other side. So I'm dealing with only positive exponents. Let me simplify my top. Just looking on the top. Number-wise, there's a -4. Letter-wise, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. I see m to the second. I see an n to the fourth. And then I see p to the 5. Notice that I added the exponents on the p. Now at the bottom, I see a -4, m to the 3, and n. My last part, this is the easy part. My last part, I'm just basically gonna simplify. I see a -4 on the top and a -4 at the bottom, they cancel out. My m's, because I'm gonna go to alphabetical order, I have to subtract the exponents. I know 3 minus 2 is 1, but I'm gonna put an m to the 1 at the bottom. Remember, I always write them where the big exponent is. So I subtracted my exponents, but I write them where the big exponent is. When it comes to n's, technically the one at the bottom is an n to the 1. So when I subtract my exponent, it's going to give me n to the 3. Notice this one, I wrote it on the top because the big exponent was on the top. And then when it comes to p's, I have p to the 5 on top. If I'm writing this, if this was on paper and I just had to write it, that's it. When I'm typing it, I'm going to go n to the 3rd, p to the 5th over m. I use the backslash for fractions. Anything that comes before the backslash is what goes on the top. Anything that comes after is what goes at the bottom. And for exponents, I'm using that little caret, that symbol that comes with the 6 in your keyboard. So Shift 6, that gives me that caret. All right, let's take a look at number 20. Again, get rid of parentheses if there's any, and then get rid of negative exponents. So just looking at what I have on the top, like I said, my focus is just the top. I have a 4 and I have an x squared at the bottom. Anything with a negative exponent, I bring it to the other side. Here I have a question is how do we write a fraction? As example, 4 over n. 4 over n is 4 backslash n. We're going to use the backslash for fractions. Okay. Like I said, I was just focused on the top. Now let me just focus at the bottom. My focus is just at the bottom. I see a 4 at the bottom, so I'm going to put my 4 there. So in fact, let me, I'll put it right here. Let me bring a 4 here. Because I'm just looking at the bottom. Then I see x to the -1. So that means x to the 1 on the top. Then I see a y to the 0. We learned yesterday that y to anything to the 0 is 1. But it basically, we ignore them. Because at the bottom, I'm just looking at the bottom, it's all multiplication. But we ignore the ones in multiplication. So I'm going to ignore the y to the 0. And then I'm going to write z to the 4th on the top. Again, I'm just taking care of the negative exponents. When it's negative on the top, bring it to the bottom as a positive. When it's negative at the bottom, bring it to the top as positive. And then I'm going to simplify things a little. Just looking on the top, numbers-wise, it's a 4. Letter-wise, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So I have x and z to the 4th. At the bottom, I have a 4, x squared. My 4's cancel out. We learned that back in the days, how cancel fractions, so how to simplify. My 4's cancel out. When it comes to letters, when it comes to x's, subtract the exponent. Technically, the one that you don't see it is to the 1. So subtract the exponents, put it where the bigger exponent is. So I'm going to have x to the 1 at the bottom. When it comes to z's, I have z to the 4th on the top. So if I was just writing it, that's it, z to the 4th over x. If I'm typing it, z to the 4th over x. Remember, anything before the backslash goes on top. Anything after the backslash is what goes on the bottom. If there's a negative sign anywhere, because sometimes we're going to have negative signs, but we only have one negative sign, bring it to the front. It doesn't matter if it comes from the bottom or the top. All right, let's take a look at number 21. Let me deal with the negative exponents first. So I'm looking at what I have on the top, just the top. There's a -2 on the top. My x squared, I'm going to leave it on the top. Now my y, I'm going to bring it to the bottom. And my z, I'm going to keep it on top, z to the 3rd. Anything that had a negative exponent, I bring it to the bottom. Now let me focus on the bottom. To begin with, there's a negative sign. So I'm going to keep that negative sign. And then x to the -1. So x to the 1 on the top. Then I'm going to have a y to the 1 on the top and a z to the 3 at the bottom. All right, anything that had a negative exponent, I moved it to the other side. And again, when I say sides, I'm talking about the top side or the bottom side. All right, let me simplify things out now. I'm just looking on the top. When it comes to numbers, I have a -2. When it comes to x's, I have x to the 3, right? I added the exponents. When it comes to y's, I just have a y. And when it comes to z's, I have a z to the 3rd. Now, when I look at the bottom, there's a negative sign, there's a y, and there's a z to the 3. So now let me finalize, let me simplify everything. Negative with negative, basically they cancel out. If there was only one negative sign, I bring it to the front. Because there's 2, they cancel out. So I have, on top of my fraction, I have a 2. When it comes to x's, I have x to the 3 on the top. When it comes to y, they cancel out. Right? If I subtract my exponents, 1 minus 1 is 0. So that means they cancel out. And when it comes to the z's, I subtract my exponents, 3 minus 3 is 0. I guess they cancel out as well. There's nothing at the bottom, so it's not a fraction anymore. Some of my answers are not fractions. The way I'm going to type this will be 2x to the third. I don't have to type a fraction because I don't have a fraction anymore. Still a little bit more. So we're looking at all the rules combined. Let me deal with parentheses if there's any. Let me deal with negative exponents if there's any. Now, when I see here, number 22, I don't have parentheses. I don't have negative exponents. So I'm just going to simplify the top. Just looking at the top, numbers-wise, I have a 3. When it comes to m, I have 6. When it comes to n, I have 5. Notice I added the exponents. At the bottom, I have an m squared, and I'm not going to even worry about the n. All right, n to the 0, anything to the 0, I don't even bother writing it. All right, let me simplify this. Again, I'm expecting a fraction, so I'm going to draw a fraction bar. Numbers-wise, there's a 3 on the top. When it comes to m, I get m to the 4 on the top. Again, it's division, because now a fraction is division. We subtract the exponents, right? 6 minus 2 is 4. You subtract the exponents and keep it where the bigger exponent was. So the bigger exponent was on the top, so it goes on the top. And then n to the 5th. I have nothing at the bottom, so it's not a fraction anymore. The way I'm going to type this, 3 m to the 4 n to the 5. Try to keep your letters in alphabetical order. Mathematically speaking, it is correct, but I type my key as in alphabetical order, so keep them in alphabetical order. Now here, number 23, I see some negative exponents. So there's a negative sign in front of the fraction. I'm just focused on the top. I'm just looking at what we have on the top. I'm going to keep the 4 on the top, x to the 3rd at the bottom, and y to the 4th on the top. Right? Anything that had a negative exponent, I brought it to the bottom. Now I'm going to focus just at the bottom. So I have an x to the 3 at the bottom. I have a y to the 2 times 4, and then y to the 4th. If there was anything with a negative exponent, bring it to the top as a positive exponent. But there wasn't. So let's see. So I know there's a negative in front of the fraction. Let me just worry about the top. I just have a 4 y to the 4th. There's not much I can simplify from the top. At the bottom, number-wise, there's a 4. When it comes to x, I have x to the 6, and then I have y to the 6. Notice I added the exponents. So that's how I got the 6 on the x. And then I added the exponent, so I got a 6 on the y. So let me simplify things out. So I know there's a negative in front of my fraction. Number-wise, the 4's cancel out. When it comes to x, I have an x to the 6 at the bottom. When it comes to y, I have y on the top, y at the bottom. So let me subtract. Let me subtract my exponent, so I get y to the 2, but I'm going to write it y to the 2 at the bottom because the bigger exponent was at the bottom. Now here, I cannot have a negative on the empty space on the top. So let me put a 1 there. So that's it. If I was to write it, this is it. If I'm going to type it, bring the negative to the front, and there's a 1 over x to the 6, y to the 2. So that's how I'm going to type it. Let's see, I have a question in the chat. So for the m to the 4, you just put the caret part behind the m to put it in the computer. M to the 4th, notice how x to the 6, notice I went x to the 6. And then y to the 2nd, notice how I went y to the 2nd. So m to the fourth, I use m caret 4. All right, let's take a look at number.
Right in the chat.
Well, what was that again?
So I did it right, like how I would put it on there.
Because you wrote that you put the caret behind the m. Do you put it actually between the m and the 4?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now looking at number 24. Again, right now I'm just focusing on any negative exponents. So I'm just focusing on the top. If I see anything with a negative exponent, I bring it to the other side. So u to the third, I bring it to the bottom. I keep the -2, I keep an u and a v to the third. Right? The -2 is a negative number, but it's a positive exponent. I'm just focusing on the exponents. Then my focus is on the numbers at the bottom. Anything that has a negative exponent, I'm gonna bring it to the top. So I have a -3. So matter of fact, let me put my negative inside parentheses so I remember there's a negative. U to the second on the top and V to the 1 on the top. Anything that had a negative exponent, I bring it to the other side. So let me simplify. Looking on the top, just the top. Number-wise is just a -2. When it comes to U, I have U to the third. When it comes to V, I have V to the fourth. Notice I added the exponents on U, I added the exponents on V. At the bottom, I have a -3 U to the third. All right, now the final simplified. The negative signs cancel out, so that's great. Number-wise, I have a 2/3. Nothing I can do. If I could simplify them, I could divide them by something to make them smaller. By all means, do so. When it comes to U, I subtract my exponents and gives me U to the 0, so I don't worry, they cancel out. And then I have a V to the fourth on the top. So the way I'm going to type this will be 2V to the fourth over 3. Again, hopefully you guys are following along, copying things down. Number 25. Just focusing on the top. Anything that has a negative exponent, bring it to the other side. So the 3 stays on the top. I get x squared and y to the 1 at the bottom. Right? Anything with a negative exponent, bring it to the other side. Now let me just focus on the bottom. So there's a 3 at the bottom. There's a y. There's an x to the fourth. There's a -3. I'm going to keep that inside parentheses so I remember there's a negative sign. And then x squared, y squared. Right? Anything with a negative exponent, I bring it to the other side. So let me simplify things out. On the top, I just have a 3. That's all I got. Number-wise, at the bottom, at 3 times a -3, that gives me a -9. When it comes to x's, I'm going to add the exponents. So I got x to the 8th. I added the exponents on x. When it comes to y, I get y to the 4th. I added the exponents on y. Remember, those y's that don't have an exponent is technically y to the 1. So I added the exponents. So now my final simplification. So I see a negative sign. And I said earlier, I said it a couple of times, when you see a negative sign, just one negative sign, bring it to the front. So there's going to be a negative at the front of my fraction. Number-wise, 3/9, let me call that 1/3. I divided each number by 3 to make them smaller. Letter-wise, I have an x to the 8 and y to the 4 at the bottom. So if I was to write it, that's it. Because I'm going to type it, I'm going to write a negative and then 1/3 x to the 8th, y to the 4th. I'm going to zoom out in a little so you guys will be able to see. You guys will be able to take a screenshot, hopefully. All right, so a couple more of these. These are exponents are a little challenging. Let me take a look at a few more. Let me start by simplifying. So I see there's a negative inside of in front of the fraction. Focus just on the top. Anything with a negative exponent, bring it to the bottom. So on the top, I have 3xy squared. There's a negative 4. But my x to the 1 and y to the 2, I bring it to the bottom. Right? Anything that has a negative exponent, bring it to the other side. Now I'm just going to focus on those at the bottom. At the bottom, I have a 3, x to the 3rd, and y to the 4th. Anything that had a negative exponent, I bring it to the top. Let me simplify things out. I see there's a negative sign in front of my fraction. And then I have numbers wise, I have a negative 12 because I multiplied 3 times the negative 4, so negative 12, x and y to the 2nd. At the bottom, I have a 3, x to the 4th, and y to the 6th. Notice I added the exponents of my letters. All right, numbers wise, I see 2 negative signs, so they cancel out. Numbers wise, 12 over 3 is just the 4, right? 12 divided by 3 is 4. When it comes to x's, subtract the exponents. So that gives me x to the 3 at the bottom, right? The bigger exponent is at the bottom, so it goes to the bottom. When it comes to y's, subtract the exponents, and I get y to the 4 at the bottom. Right? When you have fractions, subtract the exponents, keep it where the bigger exponent was, so keep it at the bottom. If I was to write it, that's it. The way I'm going to type it will be 4 over x to the 3, y to the 4. Hopefully right now you guys are like, all right, not too bad. So let me simplify. I see some negative exponents. So on the top, I have 3x to the 4th, y to the 3rd. Nothing I'm going to do. None of them have a negative exponent. Now looking at the bottom, my 4 and my y, I leave it at the bottom because they have positive exponents. But my x squared, I bring it to the top. Then at the bottom, I still keep an x to the 3rd and y to the 4th. Let me simplify things out. On the top, I have a 3. Numbers wise, there's just a 3. When it comes to x, I have x to the 6th and y to the 3rd. I added the exponents. I added the exponents on the x. At the bottom, numbers wise, I just have a 4, have x to the 3, and y to the 5th. All right, let me simplify things out. Let me draw the fraction bar. Numbers wise, 3 over 4, nothing I can do. When it comes to x, I have x to the 3 on the top. I subtracted my exponents, kept it where the big exponent was. When it comes to y, I have a y to the 2 at the bottom. I subtracted my exponents and kept it where the big exponent was. So that's it. If I'm going to write it, that's it. If I'm going to type this, 3x to the 3rd over 4y to the 2nd. I know it takes us a few steps, not easy. Exponents are supposed to be a little complicated. Now, question number 28. I see some negative exponents. I'm going to simplify things out. On the top, I'm going to keep a 3x to the 4th. Right? They have positive exponents. The y to the 4th, I'm going to bring it to the bottom. And there's still a 3 on the top. My y to the 0, I'm not even going to worry about it. Now, from the bottom, I'm going to keep the 4 and the y at the bottom. They both have positive exponents. Let me simplify things out. On the top, I have a 9x to the 4th. At the bottom, I have a 4y to the 5th. Funny thing is, numbers wise, 9 over 4, nothing I can do. Letter-wise, nothing I can do. So that's it. The way I'm going to type this would be 9x to the 4th over 4y to the 5th. All right, one last on exponents. One last one. Hopefully right now you guys are like, all right, this is not too hard. I see some negative exponents, so let me simplify. On the top, I'm going to keep the negative u. I know it has a negative sign, but the exponent is positive, so I'm going to keep it on the top. V to the 4th times 3, u to the 2nd, but I'm bringing the v to the 1 to the bottom, right? Anything that has a negative exponent, bring it to the other side. Now, let me worry about those from the bottom. There's a negative 3. I'm going to keep that at the bottom. It's a negative number, but it has a positive exponent, u to the 3rd. But my v to the 1, I bring it to the top. Now, let me simplify things out. Numbers-wise, on the top, there's a negative sign, and there's a 3. When it comes to u, I have u to the 3rd. I added the exponents. When it comes to v, I got v to the 5th. Notice I'm going my letters alphabetical order. Now, at the bottom, there's a negative 3, u to the 3rd, and a v. Now, let me simplify. The negative 3's cancel out, right? The negatives cancel out. The 3's cancel out. The u's, funny thing is they cancel out as well. I subtract the exponents, 0, so they cancel out. When it comes to v, I get v to the 4th. I keep it on the top, so I don't have a fraction anymore. The way I'm going to type that is v to the 4th. So that's the idea on exponents. Now, to move on a little to what we're going to be looking at, let me work up until number 33. When we have parentheses, I'm going to multiply the number on the outside. I'm going to multiply to the numbers on the inside. So negative 8 times 1 is going to give me a negative 8. Negative 8 times a negative 5p. Looking at the numbers, negative times a negative is positive. So positive 40p. Now the negative 8 and the 40p cannot be combined because one has a p, the other one does not. So that's it, negative 8 plus 40p. Looking at number 31, let me multiply that 8 to the inside. So that gives me negative 16a and then minus 48, right? 8 times 6 gave me 48. Again, this cannot be combined because one of them has an a, the other one does not. So that's it, negative 16a minus 48. Looking at number 32. Now this 4 times the negative sign, that will give me a negative 4a. And then 4 times 1, we know that's plus 4. We call this distributive property. The number on the outside gets distributed to the numbers on the inside. And lastly, the negative 8 multiplied to the numbers on the inside, that gives me negative 56v minus 80. Now this we cannot combine. I know some people say, well, we could divide each by 8. Yeah, that's actually what the distributive property did. Like when we have the negative 8 on the top, that was basically dividing by 8. We just multiplied it back. But we're still going to leave it like this. Let me zoom out so you guys can take a screenshot. Take a screenshot of the work. There it is.